الذين ينضمون للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Good day, everybody. Today we will be discussing the high tensions between Israel and Iran following the assassination of Hizbullah leader Hassan Nasrallah. We have with us today two distinguished guests and experts to discuss what's next. We have Professor Gregory Aftandilian, who is lecturer at the American University. And we also have Mr. Khalil Hachem, who is an award-winning journalist and editor of YourMichigan.com. Before we get started, I have a program note. We are coming to you, ladies and gentlemen, not just on radio, but also by video. If you go to the Facebook page of US Arab Radio, you can see us there. You can see the link and you can see us in video. My first question goes to both my two guests. And let's start with Professor Aftandilian. President Biden said the other day he doesn't support striking Iran's nuclear facilities, but he's discussing with Israel the possibility of striking oil facilities. And oil prices immediately jumped by 5 and then 10% as a result. How do you read Mr. Biden's statement?
Well, I think he may have misspoken, to be honest about it, because the last thing the Biden administration wants is higher oil prices, which of course leads to higher gases at the pump in the weeks before the November election. So he may have had a slip of the tongue here because hitting Iran's oil infrastructure, one is kind of a red line for Iran because their economy is already in bad shape, and that will make it worse, and that could lead to even more Iranian escalation. But two, I think the domestic fallout would be bad for he and Vice President Harris in the coming weeks. So that's how I read it.
Mr. Hachem.
I agree. I think President Biden is in a coma, and this is why when he got out of his coma, he said that he's not really thinking ahead. This is a red line, and any disruption to oil in the Middle East is going to have, as you well know, oil is an international commodity, so that price is going to go way up. And Iran made it very clear any disruption to the ability for Iran to sell oil is going to disrupt everybody in the area. So I anticipate a tremendous amount of hitting back at other facilities in the area, preventing oil from flowing in the area over there. And that's going to make terrible consequences on the economy in the United States and the economy of the world and the election. They're not just thinking straight. This is not the first time that President Biden is not thinking straight. It seems that President Biden is following the leadership of Israel instead of the other way around.
Okay, my next question also goes to both my guests. And let's go back to Mr. Professor Aftandilian. Following the assassination of Hamas leader Mr. Haniyeh in Iran, in Tehran, how do you explain Hezbollah's failure to move its leader Nasrallah to a more secure location?
Well, that's an interesting question, but I don't have a good answer, to be honest. One would think that after the assassination of the Hamas leader, the Hizbullah leadership would have taken more precautions about protecting their own leaders. But maybe, Nasrallah wanted to show that he was defiant, that he was not going to be intimidated. So perhaps that's the reason. But I just don't have a good answer to that question.
Mr. Hachem.
I believe that's arrogance on behalf of Hezbollah. I think they gotten too big to the point where they thought they were really invincible. Hezbollah is the biggest and strongest paramilitary in the world. And then they made colossal mistakes, one after another, with the pagers, with the walkie-talkie, and then their leadership going back to meet in their headquarters at the time where they know that all of the AIs and they're not only fighting Israel, they're fighting the United States, they're fighting France, England, Germany, all of the in a spyware are in the sky, and they go back to to meet at their own headquarters. They drive with their own cars there to get there. To me, that's more arrogance than anything else. And then they continue to make mistakes, and it's really very puzzling. You would think by now that they've thought about it and seen what happened. Specifically when Mr. Netanyahu said that no one is safe and we can target anybody, which means Israel is not bounding itself by any rules if they feel like there's a target somewhere, whether it is a hospital, a school, whatever it is, and they feel justified to go after it. We've seen that in Gaza as well. How many hospitals did Israel hit because they thought there was somebody there they could get? So in that atmosphere, what Hezbollah did was pretty arrogant.
Mr. Hachem, you said that Israel is being supported by the United States, Europe, and other countries. The question is, Arab countries are not a party to the current conflict. Persian Iran is. How do you explain that?
Well, I mean, Arab countries are party to this conflict. By not doing anything, they become party to this conflict. They have been party to this conflict from day one when Israel. On October 8th, when Israel attacked, the rebound attack against Gaza, for them not to say anything, they are party of this. And there's a lot of chatters out there where in Gulf states are engaged in Israel in talks and how the war is going and all of that. So they are party to that. Mr. Netanyahu 15 years ago, when he was asked about the Arab-Israeli conflict, he said there is no such a thing anymore. He said, this is an old idea. He said the new conflict is between Israel and Iran. And Israel and Sunni Arab countries on one side, Iran and Shia Arab countries on the other side. And that's what we see today. I mean, we see two warring fronts in the area, Israel and Iran, Israel and the United States and Iran, fighting for local control in the area and regional control. So, to say that we know that some planes are taken off from from Arab countries, whether attacking Gaza, attacking Lebanon, or protecting Israel during attacks from Iran.
Professor Aftandilian, do you agree with that Arab countries are part of the conflict?
Well, certainly because they, as the previous guest mentioned, the configuration in the Middle East right now is Iran and Shia militias allied with Iran against Israel, the US, and the Sunni Arab Muslim states. So to some degree, I think that's correct. But of course, right before October 7, there was a big push to expand the so-called Abraham Accords. In other words, to get more Arab states, particularly Saudi Arabia, to establish diplomatic relations with Israel. But since the October 7 attack and the war on Gaza, we see that whole process being put on hold. But obviously the Sunni Muslim Arab states have not come to the aid of the Palestinians, except for some humanitarian efforts. But overall, that's probably the assessment of the previous guest, I believe, was correct.
Mr. Hachem, do you think a buffer zone along the Israel-Lebanon border will make the Israelis safe in the north, and why?
I don't think so, no. I mean, we've seen this movie before. Israel invaded Lebanon in 1987. Actually, Israel has been attacking Lebanon since 1948 and 67 and so forth and so on. I grew up in southern Lebanon, and that was the daily occurrence where you hear bombing on the Israeli-Lebanese. Actually, most of that area there is Lebanese area that is occupied by Israel, continue to be occupied by Israel. Anyway, Israel invaded Lebanon in 1987 because of the PLO at the time, and then it created what is called a security zone, which is about 5 miles or 3 miles along the Israeli border, and that did not really provide Israel with any, security or safety. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon all the way to Beirut, and then retreated, keeping only the south there. I was there when that happened. First at the beginning, Israel said, we're not after Lebanese, we're only after the PLO. Okay, well, the PLO left, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, we found ourselves under occupation. You couldn't leave your town, you couldn't leave southern Lebanon, and if you left, you weren't allowed to come back. We were under curfews, and this is when, in 1982 and 83, this is when Hizbullah was born and created by local people who wanted to fight the Israeli occupation because they found themselves under occupation. I remember I was in my hometown when Sharon, the previous the late Israeli defense minister and prime minister, came to our town. He and a group of people wanted to establish settlements on hilltops near our town, and this is where people took notice, like, we are under occupation, we're going to lose their land just like the Palestinians lost their land. And this is when people start fighting because there was a lot of weapons in the area left by the PLO, and people picked up weapons and start fighting. And later on in 85, mid 80s, when Hizbullah officially was organized to fight Israel. Now, creating a security zone in today's technology, in today's world, Hezbollah would be able to hit Israel even from Tripoli, which is the last town in Lebanon. They have enough weapons to do that. So creating this zone is not going to really do anything. The only thing would save Israel is to stop the war, negotiate a good settlement, and then act in good faith in the area, which Israel has not been acting in good faith.
Do you still have extended family in there?
Yes.
And
my family has moved. They evacuated when they got the order to evacuate from the south, and now they're in Beirut, in an area that somewhat safe for now. I mean, you don't know what's going to be safe and what's not going to be safe right now. Israel has its own way of determining what to hit and what not to hit. So, but we lived that movie so many times. We lived that movie of seeing Israeli soldiers coming in and the ruthless soldiers, when it comes to property, when it comes to livestock, when it comes to killing people right on site. We've lived that movie so many times. There is nothing Israel would say. What Israel is talking about, this is just consumption for Western audience. But for us, we know who Israel is. We know what Israel does. We know what kind of ruthless people they are.
Well, I'm glad to hear that your family is safe. I hope that they will remain so. And we will continue our discussion after a short break.
Thank you.
Hey, Michigan, let's think beyond the sink and learn where the water your family drinks every day comes from. Private wells and public water supplies allow homes across Michigan to draw water from different sources, like lakes, rivers, and groundwater. Tap into the facts about your home's water source and learn about your home's water quality to protect your family's health. Visit michigan.gov/care for MI drinking water. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493. The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the high tensions between Israel and Iran. And my question now goes to Professor Aftandilian. What kind of impact will the displacement of 60,000 Israelis, some people say 100,000 Israelis in the north, what kind of impact the displacement will have on the Israeli economy and social fabric?
Well, I mean, over the past year, because this war has now gone on for nearly almost a year, the Israeli GDP has probably gone down a couple of percentage points. And of course, with the Lebanon invasion, Israel has had to call up more military reserves. In other words, those are the people who work in the civilian sector, but are doing reserve duty now in Lebanon, which means that they're not in their civilian jobs. So this, of course, will continue to have a negative effect on the Israeli economy, but I'm not sure that's going to stop any type of military activity. The Israeli economy prior to October 7 was quite strong, so they still have a cushion there. And, it's certainly hurting the economy, but not to the point of having that economy impact the longevity of this war.
Mr. Hachem, any comment?
Yes, I agree with the professor, because I think the impact is a lot more popular impact. People are not happy. And don't forget that the Israeli economy is very strong, and the Israeli economy is supported by other countries as well, like the United States. So I don't think that this is going to really affect it tremendously. It may affect a lot of people on the ground as far as a small mob, shops and things like that. But the biggest impact is that you have 100,000 people have not been back to their homes since October 8th, and these are people, since last October, and these are people that they're costing the government tremendous amount of money, but it's more the morale issue, and then the public pressure.
The shift, Professor Aftandilian, the shift from aircraft to drones and missiles and smart technology is changing the military landscape. Do you think the shift plays to Israel's or to Iran's advantage?
Well, Iran certainly has beefed up its missile and drone capabilities over the past decade. There's no question about that. And of course, we saw that in April and just recently with the air attacks on Israel by Iran. But Israel still has that technological edge. As we all know, most of those Iranian rockets and drones were actually intercepted by the Israeli defense systems, as well as, of course, assistance from the United States and some European powers. We saw, of course, the sophisticated attack prior to the air attacks on Hizbullah leaders and operatives with the explosions that occurred, especially with the walkie-talkies and other things. So Israel has been able to maintain this technological edge, even though Iran's military has grown more sophisticated over the past decade.
Mr. Hachem, how come Iran is overcoming the sanctions and they still have technology?
Well, as you all know, Iran has done tremendous amount of work to go around the sanctions, and because there are other countries out there that will benefit from Iran's oil, and Iran has perfected going around the sanctions and providing means to protect itself. And then they have developed not only great missile technology, they have sent satellites into space. They've done a lot of work to do so. And keep in mind there are a lot of adversaries, there are a lot of countries out there who don't like each other, such as China or have conflicting interests, rather. China and Russia and North Korea and so forth and so on. And these people, are working with Iran to develop technology and to learn from that. And, since we're talking about technology, every side is really learning and benefiting from the current technology, although Israel is a little bit more sophisticated and has a lot more money to spend on technology. And we can see that from what Israel is doing using AI and using other technologies to track Hezbollah leaders and track a lot more activities on the ground. However, though, we got to keep in mind here is what Israel did with the pagers is the same thing what ISIS did with the 9/11 when they weaponized planes to attack buildings. And what Israel did by weaponizing pagers, now can be copied by other groups. So I think the rippling effect of what's going on in the Middle East now, we're going to feel that way down the road because everybody has access to technology, and God help us, what's going to happen down the road, people weaponizing pagers and telephones and so forth and so on. I think we are in a we need to really be very careful as countries to really try to do something about this and control it. Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble.
Mr. Hachem, I want to go back to the situation of your family. Is Lebanon losing in the current conflict between Israel and Iran? Where does Lebanon and the Lebanese people stand?
The Lebanese people have always wanted their own soldiers to protect them. But the fact that the Lebanese soldiers can't even protect themselves, they're not well trained, they're not well armed. The Lebanese government for the longest time wanted its soldiers to be protected and armed well, but the United States refused to provide that, and Israel worked very hard to make sure that Lebanese soldiers are not well protected and not well armed. In general, this is what most Lebanese, regardless of their sects, they want their military to protect them. As you well know, Lebanon is a sectarian country, and it has been reeling from terrible civil war that lasted for years and years and years and destroyed the country. Is Lebanon really winning this by getting caught up in the war of influence between Iran and Israel? No country is being trashed like this is winning. Nobody is winning. People are dying, homes are being destroyed. But this is not just about, you got to keep in mind, this is not just about Iran and Israel. Israel has had territorial ambitions in Lebanon for the longest time. 1916, before Lebanon became a country, Jewish groups were interested in southern Lebanon because it's a beautiful hills along the shores of the Mediterranean, and also it's rich with water. Also, southern Lebanon, this is where the Litani River dumps. The Litani River, the salinity in it is 0.025, which is you can drink it immediately without needing to do anything any treatment to it. The next best water in the area is 2.25 part per million. So Israel has had its eyes on southern Lebanon for the longest time. In 1926, when Christian factions were talking to the French about what kind of country they're going to have, Jewish groups approached them along with Ben Gurion at the time, telling them, leave southern Lebanon out of the country of Lebanon, and then we'll give you whatever you need. And they refused to do that. In 1933, the same groups asked the France and England to do the same, and they refused to do so. So Israel has been trying to annex southern Lebanon for the longest time. So this is not just about the country is not just caught between Iran and Israel. Also southern Lebanese in particular, feel that they're fighting for their own land. And they've done that before, and they defeated Israel before, and I'm sure they will do that again.
Professor Aftandilian, I want to get your feedback on whether what Mr. Hachem said, that Israel has its eyes set on Lebanon and for a long time.
Well, I tend to disagree a bit with the former speaker because, as we all know, Israel occupied the southern part of Lebanon from 1982 to the year 2000. And under Prime Minister Ehud Barak of Israel, then they pulled out. They had an unhappy experience, to say the least, in occupation of southern Lebanon over the many years. So I'm really not sure that they want to retain territory in southern Lebanon. Certainly they want to control that area, but I think that's different from any long-term occupation because they've had that experience before.
Okay, I will give you, Mr. Hachem, an opportunity to respond if you wish, but after we come back from a short break.
Okay.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights. With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Najee Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the high tensions in the Middle East. And Mr. Hachem, I want to hear whether or not you have a comment on what Professor Aftandilian said. Israel does not want to retain territory in Lebanon.
Well, I would like to believe that, and I hope that this is the truth, but the reality on the ground doesn't really support that, because First, Israel has been, started occupying part of southern Lebanon in 1978. It expanded in 1982, and then retreated, and then was defeated after 16 or 18 years or something like that of painful war for both sides. Lebanese really, in general, because I remember when I was in Lebanon, lived under occupation for 1 year. And the first 6 months were really good time. I mean, Israel pushed the PLO away from southern Lebanon. Israel did not show any hostilities to the Lebanese at the time. Israeli visitors start coming to visit the area. People set up shops along the main roads. There were a lot of discussions that Israel would reach some kind of an agreement with, just like they promised, with the Lebanese government, and then we can put this chapter behind us, and for a brief period of time, people really believed it. And people from southern Lebanon visited Jerusalem. They started going back and forth. There was totally different atmosphere. And then all of a sudden, we found out that we were under occupation. There are a lot of groups in Israel. And right now, really, who is really driving policy in Israel is the settlement groups. And there are a lot of groups in Israel with settlement groups who wish to see part of southern Lebanon as they see it as biblical land. They see that this is also God promised it to them. If you do enough research on these groups, you can see, this is what they want. Also, if you take a look at on the Knesset wall in Israel, the Knesset is the Israeli parliament. It has a map of a greater Israel and extends beyond the current states that we have now. In that area, it's about power. And if Israel could annex, same thing with the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights are Syrians. You know that. I know that. The professor knows that. But recently, Israel annexed that. If you go to the State Department now, you look up, the Golan Heights, it doesn't say it's Syrian land. It doesn't say it's occupied land. It shows it part of Israel. And it wouldn't take Israel much. If Israel could occupy southern Lebanon and stay there. They tried, and even when Israel left Lebanon in 2000, they could have left it differently. They could have arranged. There was a lot of talks of making an arrangement with the Lebanese government, and they didn't do that. They just picked up and left, and that gave life to remnants and gave life actually to Hizbullah, and then made it even stronger, because it showed that Hizbullah won against Israel by driving Israel out of Lebanon by force, instead of making an arrangement with the Lebanese government as the talks were going on at that time, and Israel decided not to do so.
I want to go back to a statement by President Biden, who said the other day that he is opposed to striking Iran's nuclear facilities. Professor Aftandilian, what do you think his reason is?
Well, I think the reason would be that if you do strike the nuclear facilities, that would be a red line for Iran, and Iran would then be compelled to retaliate, and you would then have escalation in the Middle East, and more Israeli strikes, more Iranian strikes, and there'll be a conflagration in the region that the administration, the Biden administration, wants to avoid. So I think the Biden administration was saying essentially that the Middle East is already a dangerous place, and we don't want to make it even more dangerous by any Israeli attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. Though that may not deter the Netanyahu government, because as we know, the Biden administration does not seem to have much pull right now over the Israeli government. So this situation bears close watching over the next several weeks.
Mr. Hachem, what do you think Mr. Biden's reason is?
Well, I agree with the professor. I don't think Mr. Netanyahu is really cares or listens to what President Biden said or does. And to be honest with you, we've seen this administration saying one thing and doing another. I mean, since October 8th, this administration is talking about ceasefire, talking about less hostilities, and at the same time supplying Israel with all the weapons it needs to carry on the war in Gaza and in Lebanon. It really doesn't really matter. What matters is that who makes the decision to go to war. And right now, it's not the United States. It's Mr. Netanyahu, because there's a strong agreement between Israel and the United States that Israel will defend, the United States that will defend Israel no matter what. So if Mr. Netanyahu decides to go to war with Iran, you're talking about the United States going to war with Iran. And this is very clear. This administration and the State Department, if you listen to them, they're just playing distractions, and they're playing misdirection. They talk about discussions and negotiations and all of that, but at the same time, they're allowing and I don't know if they could do anything about it or not, but they're giving Israel all the weapons it needs and all the protection it needs, all the support it needs to do whatever Israel wants to do. And right now, the decision to go to war is not in Washington. It is in Tel Aviv. It is Mr. Netanyahu who would decide whether America goes to war with Iran or not.
The U.S. says it stands with freedom everywhere. Do you see it standing with the freedom for the Palestinian people, Professor Aftandilian?
Well, of course, one has to parse out between the public statements and then the activities. So the public statements are that the Biden administration supports a two-state solution. Vice President Harris has spoken about Palestinian self-determination. But of course, how do you get there from point A to point B? They don't really spell out. And of course, under a right-wing government, the most extreme right-wing government in Israel that we currently have there, it's almost impossible to envision that. There would really have to be a change within the Israeli polity for any type of two-state solution to come about. So while the public statements talk about self-determination, statehood, and things like that, there's really no, I would suggest, strong U.S. policy to push the Israeli government in that direction at this point.
Mr. Hachem, is the Palestinian issue dead under the current circumstances?
Well, it has been dead for a while, and what October 7 was supposed to do is to reset that. And I don't know whether they have been successful in resetting it or not. How much suffering could you use to reset it? Because it has not reset in the Arab world, and this is what's really important. Look at Egypt. Egypt has been on ice since they signed the agreement, the Camp David agreement. The whole idea of signing an agreement with Egypt was not peace in the Middle East. It was only to sideline Egypt, because Egypt is the heart of the Arab world, and without Egypt, Arabs would never fight Israel, and we've seen that till today, except small fights like we've seen. Excuse me. And so for the U.S. to say whatever the U.S. is going to say, there's really no two-state anymore. Where are you going to have a Palestinian state? It really is not going to be where. Most of the area right now, you're dealing with an area like a Swiss cheese, and most of the settlers will live there. And as the professor said, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Do you think Israel and the U.S. together are creating a new Middle East, or want to create a new Middle East that is void of Iranian political and military influence? Is that the ultimate goal, not just Hezbollah and Israel?
Well, I'm sorry, is that my question?
Yeah, for both of you. Let's go with you, Mr. Hachem, first.
Well, I mean, they would love to do that, and I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, a new Middle East. What are we going to get new here? Is that Palestinians are not going to have a state. Iran is not going to have influence, and then we're going to have a new canal that goes from Israel to the sea, and we're going to have different areas that favors, the United States and Israel. And the price of peace, what Israel is saying and the United States is saying, is that you give up on your aspirations as Palestinian people for a homeland and for your own country, which is, most Arab countries rather, and and the masses as well, have given up on that. The only people that have not given up on that, most Palestinians have given up on that. The only groups that have not given up on that are in Gaza and in Lebanon and a few other countries. Will the United States be successful in creating whatever new Middle East they want? It's going to be very difficult to say, since people like Hamas and others don't want that, and they're going to continue to create problems for the United States to do that.
Professor Aftandilian will get your response after the break.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
Hey, Michigan, let's think beyond the sink and learn where the water your family drinks every day comes from. Private wells and public water supplies allow homes across Michigan to draw water from different sources, like lakes, rivers, and groundwater. Tap into the facts about your home's water source and learn about your home's water quality to protect your family's health. Visit michigan.gov/care for MI drinking water. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the high tensions in the Middle East, and my question goes to Professor Aftandilian now. Do you think Israel and together with the US are creating a new Middle East that's void of Iranian political and military influence?
Well, I agree with the previous guest that that is certainly the goal, and this is what they want to accomplish. but it's going to be very difficult to do that as long as the Iranian regime in Tehran maintains power, because part of their ideological drive is the so-called resistance movements, mostly made up of Shia groups in the Arab world, that gives Iran influence in the region. I should also add that I think part of the impetus for the so-called Abraham Accords, in other words, to bring Sunni Arab Muslim states to have diplomatic relations with Israel, part of that strategy is an anti-Iran strategy to bolster relations between Israel and some of the Sunni Arab Muslim states to be a hedge against Iran. But as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, that has been put on hold given all the events that have taken place since October.
Mr. Hachem, I have a tough question for you.
Okay.
President Biden said the killing of Mr. Nasrallah is a measure of justice for his victims. Do you agree with Mr. Biden?
Well, killing one person really doesn't really change anything. And I remember when I was doing a report in Beirut, and I visited one of the Palestinian camps, and it says this something was written on the walls there in many places. It's called "Bodies fall, but ideas endure." The killing of one person doesn't really make a change in a war like this, because most of these people, when they're trained, they're trained and they know they're going to die one day. Whether it brings, justice or not to some, this is in the eye of the beholder. It depends on what side of the fence really, you're on. And President Biden is on one side of the fence, and the other side doesn't really see it that way. Personally, I don't really get involved in these things as a reporter. I try to maintain my objectivity. Never killing of anybody brings justice to anybody. What would bring justice is to find a solution to this conflict, and then we don't have to do any killing of anybody. I remember my family growing up in the and they continue to live in southern Lebanon. All they wanted is to live in peace. All they wanted is for the Lebanese army to protect them. Our house has been destroyed 3 times, and we're not sure whether it has been destroyed or not. And I would hate for my mom to go through the agony of building the home one more time. Justice or not, what my mom would like to see is the end of her life is to live in her home safely. And that's what the justice would be. Justice would be is to, we got 50,000 women and children and Palestinians died in Gaza. Who's talking about justice for them? Maybe what President Biden is talking about justice for Israelis, but who's talking about justice for the Palestinians? Who's talking about justice for 1,800 people that have just died in Lebanon? These are civilians. 95% of the targets that Israel has hit in Lebanon are civilian targets, our homes, our hospitals, our schools. Who's talking about justice for them? This is, when we talk about justice would have to be for everybody. Otherwise, it's not really justice. And this is something very, very important. And I just want to add one more thing, if I may. The heart of the issue in the Middle East will continue to be, maybe at different levels, is the Palestinian issue. And will continue to be that. And as long that issue is not solved justly, okay, if President Biden wants justice, he could solve the Palestinian issue justly. Then there'll be peace for everybody. Then everybody can live in peace and freedom.
Professor Aftandilian, as you said, as Mr. Hachem said, the ultimate issue here is the Palestinian. Will the two-state solution ultimately emerge when the current wars are over?
Well, I mean, that is the hope, but the reality is something different. As I said, Israel has the most right-wing government it's ever had. And, Prime Minister Netanyahu has never really believed in a two-state solution. And people to the right of him in his own cabinet have said the government would fall if he would ever advocate something like that. So it's hard to believe that there would ever be a two-state solution under this current Israeli government. Perhaps if the Israeli polity shifts to the left, you might have a chance. But that's a big if. And then, of course, the question arises, what happens with all the settlements in the West Bank? How do you create a viable state and deal with the settlements issue? So, as I said earlier, getting from point A to point B is a very difficult task.
Mr. Hachem, we haven't talked about Syria. Is Syria a factor in all what's happening now?
Well, I mean, Syria is reeling from a terrible war. Syria is weak. Israel continues bombing Syria, and Syria can't defend itself. I don't know what can Syria do right now. There's a huge contingency of ISIS on the Syrian border near Israel. Syria really is, the United States occupies part of Syria. There's a small camp where the U.S. is there. There are other countries are there. I think Syria is in tatters. At this point, Syria can play no role in anything except like absorb some shots and some hits and can't even defend itself. I don't know if Syria can defend anybody or help anybody. Syria may be part of if, sane people get together in the area and they want to solve more of an issue altogether. Syria can play a small role, but right now I don't see Syria playing anything. As you well know, the Assad regime is barely holding to power. And, there is really no winners or losers there, except the Syrian people are the people who really lost in that country. And that beautiful country was destroyed, and everybody is guilty of that.
Mr. Professor Aftandilian, what price Israel will have to pay ultimately for its wars in Gaza and Lebanon?
Well, I mean, in the international arena, Israel's standing has certainly taken a big hit because of so many Palestinian civilian deaths. And the international community has strongly, advocated for a lasting ceasefire. But that does not seem to be in the cards right now. And there's no real end to this war in Gaza. And, one can even say the same thing in Lebanon. There's no real end to this war in Lebanon either. So I think as long as the wars go on, the more Israel will take a hit internationally. But I'm not sure that will deter the current Israeli government at this point.
Mr. Hachem, I have 1 minute left. And my last question is, do you think that Israel, together with the U.S., seek to topple the religious regime in Iran?
They hope so. I mean, if they could do it, they will. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but if they could, they will. And I'm sure there are a lot of plans out there to do that, but they have been unable to do so. Whether it is through military or financial or economic, they would love to see that regime go, and it makes it much easier for their, imperialistic policies in the area.
Mr. Khalil Hachem, thank you very much. I also extend my thanks to Professor Gregory Aftandilian for their contribution.
Thank you.
And my viewers or listeners or audience will see you next time, the first Friday next month. So have a good weekend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.